Hello, this is Jody Kirk in Albuquerque, New Mexico, with Civil Clarity Reports. I'm here with Marty Espinosa and our guest, Tarik Dana. Marty, introduce yourself, please.
Yes, I'm Marty Espinosa, and I'm a founder with John, and then Jody came and joined us after that. And we've been a pretty good partnership.
And
So,
Tarik, would you please give us a little bit about yourself and who you are?
My name is Tarik Dina. I was born in Nigeria, raised in Lebanon, and left Lebanon at the end of the when the Civil War ended. Went to Canada for about a year and a half, finished high school there, and came down to the U.S. on a student visa and went to school at OU to study computer science. That's kind of a quick history of my.
yeah,
And I've
so
been in
thank you.
Norman, Oklahoma since then, with a little bit of traveling.
Excellent. You want to open it by just telling us a little bit about Lebanon and what some of your experiences there. I'm sure there have been many.
I'm sure you've heard stories about how beautiful the country is, which it is, but due to a 15-year civil war, followed by almost 40 years of corrupt rule, you ended up with 2019 with basically a bankrupt country. Um, the main thing that's keeping the country alive, in my opinion, is what the expatriates that send money back home to their families or through donations or contributions that people do, because the Lebanese pound has lost like almost 90 over 95% of its value in the last couple of years.
Hmm.
And so if your paycheck is coming with the Lebanese pound, you're really in a terrible shape. So a lot of companies are paying like partially in dollar, partially, so they're mixing it, but it's just a bad situation. So Lebanon, you can still go there, have a good time. Because like in the summer, I was there in summer I went there July 12th, came back the 21st. I was there for about 8 days. I had a great time, but
Oh,
it was
wonderful.
an influx of tourism. Lebanon lives on tourism mostly. And during between May and August, almost people like me flock from all over the world back to Lebanon to see family, spend time, go to weddings, whatever's going on. So that influx actually helped infuse a little bit of the economy, make people feel a little better because you got that huge infusion of money. And so it stabilized the economy for a bit, but that's only temporary because there's no, I mean, it's, it's just pure corruption. And foreign government used to try to help Lebanon by giving them loans, but what would happen is the money comes in, people in the government who are just crooks take most of the money and end up not doing any projects. Lebanese people know there's corruption, so they're actually, if you take a little bit off the top but get the project done, they'll be fine with it. But this last batch of people, I mean, nothing but corruption, and in the end the foreign government pretty much said, until you get an honest government that we can trust in there, we're not giving you any more money, which kind of exploded into that final financial crisis finally, because it was a Ponzi scheme. They
And,
were
and
just getting people to deposit money, giving them high interest, and at the same time they're using up all their money. So people who have money in the bank, uh, they can't pull it out because the banks can't. There's not enough money to give everybody their money back because they've spent that money.
wow.
So a little bit of history about Lebanon where it's at right now. And then you have what enables corruption. I mean, do you want me to go deeper into that?
Sure. Go
Sure.
ahead.
You give us a story.
um, so you had the people who were involved in the war become in charge of the government. And there's my cat. Um, so that's, and then you have the Lebanon system is built on it's a sectarian system. The president has to be Christian Maronite. the head of parliament has to be Shiite. The head of the government, the prime minister, has to be Sunni. And so, and as you go down through the structure of the government, that spreading of sectarianism goes through. And so you have somebody that only wants to hire from their sect, or it just becomes it was like it's ripe for corruption when you have that kind of system, because you're not hiring somebody on their qualification. You're hiring somebody because I'm going to get their vote, or I'm doing somebody a favor. And that's pretty much how the whole system works. So it's prone for corruption. And then when you don't have honest people running the place, what do you expect them to do? It's like, well, they're stealing, might as well I'll steal too. Hey, he got paid to get this. I want to make money too because you're not paying me enough. So the whole thing is just set up for corruption. And if anybody tries to do the right thing, they're not going to last.
Is Lebanon on the verge of like civil war at this time, or I mean, what's going on
No,
with the people there? Are they pushing back, trying to get that fixed, or what?
there was a pushback at the in September, October of 2019. They started what's called a revolution. They went to the streets, and then guess what happened 2 months later? COVID. So that pretty much snuffed it out, and the people are just tired. There's not. It's going to take some major shock to get them all riled up again to do something about it. But you got a government that has almost no control over Lebanon, because they've ceded that control to Hezbollah, and Hezbollah is loyal to Iran. So you basically thinking we basically have an occupation by Iran of Lebanon through Hezbollah, because you have people in the government that will not stand up to Hezbollah because either they're afraid, they're benefiting from it, or they're in on it. So when you have an entity that gets over $1 billion of money from Iran a year, they pretty much set up a government within a government, and they basically marginalize the Lebanese government. So and then if you have any kind of criminals, they they protect the corrupt people, they hide the criminals. So anything you can think of that could cause the government to just not function properly, they do. And in the end, they say, we're here to protect Lebanon against Israel. Well, those two guys live off each other. Israel likes to have an enemy on the north, and they like to have Israel there because they each keep using the other as an excuse to get support, to get more, weapons, whatever it is. See, we're fighting for the right cause. I mean, both sides are doing it. Now, Hezbollah, in my opinion, and many other countries, is a terrorist organization. They have killed countless people in Lebanon. There was a slew of assassination back in 2005 after the prime minister was assassinated, which was proven by an international court that it was people from Hezbollah, by probably orders from Iran/Syria to get rid of him, because he was pushing the country to move away from their control, and they didn't like that, so they knocked him out. And then after that, the majority of parliament was on the side of people who believe in Lebanon as a kind of sovereign country, rule its own territory, and be fair to all these people. And they started assassinating those parliamentarians until they flipped the parliament to their favor, and then they became control of the government. They took over the presidency, they took over parliament, and they had pretty much, the prime minister had not much to do about it. So I'm sorry, I just go in too many angles. It's very complicated. I'm just talking about just Lebanon. Just think that just Lebanon.
So
What do you
basically,
think happening in other
And
countries?
where do you live in relation to Beirut?
Um,
Where's your town?
the best. We're far up in the north. Luckily, so we're away from the south part of the country where likely the fighting is going to happen. The war is going to affect. I was there so that's about a distance to say from South Lebanon is a very small country. I'm sure you already know that. But from South Lebanon to where I live is roughly about the distance between Norman, or they say Oklahoma City, and Dallas.
Okay.
That's about the distance. So if something happening in Dallas, it's not really affecting me in Oklahoma, kind of scenario.
Right, right. But do you expect it to eventually reach you, especially if the war does break out
No,
between?
there's nothing strategic where we are. We don't have any military bases, nothing. When I was there in 2006, when called it the Second Lebanon War took place, Hezbollah went into Israel and kidnapped and killed a few Israeli soldiers. And Israel retaliated by pretty much what they're promising to do again is bomb us back to the Stone Age. I was stuck there for a couple of weeks because they bombed the airport, and that was the only way to get out of the country through an airplane. And the other choice was to go through Syria, which was a country I sworn I will never set foot in. And the third option was we were evacuated. So that was 2000, July of 2006. And it was the largest civilian evacuation since World War II. 750,000 people were evacuated from Lebanon that month.
Wow.
We ended up going to Turkey on one USS New Jersey, I remember, and then we got stuck in Turkey for a week before we were able to fly back to the US. So that was not a best cruise. That was the first and only cruise I've taken, and it was not fun.
And how does Lebanon plan to sustain themselves if the war is coming? I think it is, and how if they are having trouble now financially and they're bankrupt, economically speaking, how are they going to survive it? I don't understand how after all these how many years of conflict did you tell me? 70 years of conflict going on down the south end there, and it seems to me once it spills over that Hezbollah is going to actually be more of the dictatorship of the country,
They already
which
control the country.
you're probably close to that now, right?
They already control it. I mean, they're pretty much in control of the country because the government has no say in anything. If they want to start a war now, they can do it. The government has no say, and it's the back to your question. There is no plan. Funny thing, I get a text from Father Sammy, who you know well. A week ago, he said, and it said the Lebanese government emergency plan for with this escalation that's going on. So I open it up. It has a Lebanese flag, and on the next page it says, "Are you serious?" So that's the Lebanese people joking about their own government because there is no plan. They're just gonna just keep going and see what happens because there's nobody in the people in charge don't care, which is Hezbollah. The government has no influence, so they don't do anything, and they just keep trucking along. So it's
I,
going to be
I
a
have
disaster.
I have a question about the southern part. There's a couple of towns. There's some areas there where there's Catholics, right? There's Christian churches down
Yeah,
below.
yep.
Are how are they holding up down there? Being that there's terrorist camps all through that area.
I honestly don't know much about that. I just know there are Christian towns down in the south, but majority of the south is Shiite. But once, I mean, the most of them have already migrated. I guess evacuated those towns because there's already been shelling across the area. So they don't. Most of them probably don't feel safe. They're just gonna move out of there. But honestly, I don't know enough about the breakdown of the towns that are Christian, but there are definitely a few down there.
Yes.
The reason also when Israel invaded Lebanon back in, because you had the Palestinian organization in Lebanon. There's too much history to really summarize in a quick conversation. But they invaded Lebanon to get rid of the PLO. And PLO was kicked out of Lebanon. They moved into the other Arab countries. And so their military presence was eliminated. But then once they left, Hezbollah, other entities kind of started to establish themselves. Hezbollah withdrew and left kind of a strip, a zone area they call it like a buffer zone between them, and to keep kind of any kind of trouble happens, it stays in Lebanon to protect Israel. And so Hezbollah started doing these attacks, guerrilla warfare. And eventually in 2000, Israel just unilaterally withdrew and went back to what's considered the blue line, the demarcation between the two countries. You'd think at that point, Hezbollah reason for existence would be gone because their resistance against the occupation of Israel of Lebanon. Israel withdrew. So its conclusion is you have no reason to stay as a resistance, correct? Well,
Right.
there's this area here that is still Lebanon, and this area here is still Lebanon. So no, we still have occupation. So the way to settle that argument was, well, it's a area between Syria and Lebanon that Syria says it's for them, or there was a dispute about who owns these because I think the maps show that they're technically part of Syria. And so, in order to settle that argument, the point is to go to the UN by saying, Syria, provide your proof where your lines are, Lebanon, and let's settle it. And Syria would never approve to that. So, the whole reason was to keep those areas stuck as unresolved to give Hezbollah reason to fight Israel, to stay as an entity against Israel. It's just an excuse.
Okay. And you've been occupied by several countries over your history, and I think didn't the French are the ones that formed Lebanon, right?
Yeah, they were I guess technically they were the good guys because they helped us build an infrastructure. They set up schools, rails, roads, and they basically, it was a mandate from 1926 to 1943 when Lebanon got its independence. And they teach us in history how the independence happened. It was not really a battle; it was more almost like they wanted to be free to run their own country, and then they were put in jail. So it was not a violent uprising, but they ended up saying, "Fine, we're gonna leave." And then I'm just thinking in recent years when it happened. It happened in 1943. What was going on in 1943? Oh, it was World War II. Probably the French said, "Okay, we're done with you guys. We're just gonna go take care of our own country." So,
Yes.
but that's
Yeah.
when Lebanon got its independence. So mandate by France. Before that was 400 years of Turkish rule. That was bad. Um, then we had what the golden years between independence until um, there was a slight uprising in 58, where the Marines and the French went into Lebanon to stabilize the country in 1958,
Right.
which kind of stabilized it until it blew up again back in 75. Um, But to give you a little reason for that, so when the country was established, it was majority Christian, and Christian families tend to have, as you went, they have lesser kids, and then Muslim families tend to have sometimes more than one wife, so more kids. So over time, the percentage of Christians versus Muslim started to change, and the last census that was done in Lebanon was in 1932. So they haven't done another one because they don't want to admit to things changing, even though technically they are. So, but you had the majority of power was with Christians until the Civil War blew up, right? So the Civil War went on for 15 years, and then they had the Taif Accord, and the resolution was they basically took power from the president, Christian, and then gave a good portion of it to the prime minister. So they kind of try to balance things out. So you think you had Christians kind of in power for that period of time. So then when the Taif Accord took place, the power kind of shifted to the Sunnis for a while. That's where the power was mostly focused at that time because most of the power shifted present to them. And then you fast forward 15 years later, as Hezbollah started taking more and more control, now the power is with the Shiite. So you kind of see with periods the power shifting between one group to the next to the next. And no one group is qualified to rule the country the way it's set up. At some point, we're going to have to come to realizations like we're going to have to figure this out. But until, I mean, Lebanon is stuck right now. You got Hezbollah's in control. The only way that will change is if Hezbollah decides to say, okay, we're done. We're going to turn our weapons and we're just going to become a political party. Not likely to happen. The other scenario is the regime in Iran changes, Hezbollah loses support, and then it could slowly move in the direction where it's going to run out of steam and change will happen. I don't see a third scenario. There's no way Israel is going to destroy, just like they're trying to destroy Hamas. I don't think they can destroy Hezbollah. They tried in 2006. You can't. I mean, you can invade the country and kill, but you're going to create more people who are going to come back and fight for you, fight against you. So it has to be some political solution in the end, because no matter how much killing you do, it's just never going to end.
Yes, and you, I've been saying since 2021, because I've been watching our current administration here in the United States. I just keep an eye on what's going on. I said that it's everything that's going to start. It's going to start in Israel, which is what I think everybody thought anyway. But I really felt it, and I told everybody about 2 months ago, keep an eye on this place. This place is going to pop, and sure as heck, I didn't know how it was going to happen, of course, but it did happen. And I think the people in Lebanon are always in the middle of this stuff, especially like probably your family and friends out there. They have really no say. From what I can tell, they kind of have to go along with what's going on there, because things change there so quickly that I think you're going to have another mass exodus. That's what I think is going to happen there. I think the Middle East is going to pop, and I think that bad things are going to happen now. And
bad things are happening now.
Yes, but they're going to happen even worse, because we don't have a strong leadership in the world now to come in and create that political change that they need there for the better.
There's been plenty of opportunities to make peace between the Israeli and Palestinians, but there have been plenty of players trying to make sure that doesn't happen. There was the Prime Minister, Ariel Sharon, I can't remember, Shimon Peres, I think, was assassinated because he was close to making a good deal with the Palestinians. I think it was time to establish a two-state solution. He was assassinated. Netanyahu has admitted that he does not believe in the two-state solution. He does not want to give up anything. That's been his policy since a long time ago. And there's been articles about him actually saying that the way that we can make sure the two-state solution doesn't happen is by empowering Hamas and weakening the moderate people in the West Bank. That's Netanyahu saying it. So when you see this attack that happened, and as the UN guy said, it didn't happen in a vacuum, there's a little bit of history going on there. Now, what Hamas did was an atrocity. They massacred people. But at the same time, how long has Israelis been massacring Palestinians over the course of 70 years? So the killings are going to keep going, because right now you got the extremist view in Israel doesn't believe in two-state solution, and the extremist view of Hamas, who thinks they're going to eliminate Israel from existence. What do you expect to happen with that scenario? So the people who want peace, they're being marginalized. But the other thing that they've been doing over time is these settlements that Israel's been building. I saw a map of the West Bank, and it's basically like Swiss cheese now. Even if they wanted to have a country, they cannot have borders, because they built all these settlements into the West Bank with all these roads and walls that you cannot have a country border, because they're trying to make it a matter of fact, like, well, you're going to have to displace all these Jewish people if you're going to have to set up an Israeli state, a Palestinian state. So they're making it as a matter of fact. They're doing the same thing in Jerusalem. They have they just basically they decide they want to kick people out of their home, and they come up with some law and just get rid of them and slowly taking over Jerusalem. I don't know. It's a to me it's when I think of Israel, they have always had the upper hand. They got the money, they got the weapons. Nobody can and hurt them badly. Um, they can make peace anytime they want to. They just don't want. So take this example of what happened recently. Hamas attacked, horrible actions by Hamas, massacre, and the immediate reaction from all Western countries was support of Israel to defend itself. Okay, that's fine. But the moment I heard that, what that told me is Israel, you have the green light to do whatever you want for at least a couple of weeks before we start to say, hey, you need to slow down. So 1,400 Israelis were massacred. Now they're upward to 7,000 Palestinians dead. So I think until you reach the 10,000 people dead, you're starting to see now some countries starting to say something. So it's the same cycle that happens every time. And
was there any given thing that you think triggered this? A lot of people here on the press claim that they believe it's because Biden gave Iran $5 billion or something to that effect, and that they passed that on to Hamas. There's a lot of rhetoric going on as to why Hezbollah attacked at this time and why they did so with such a ferocity.
you can make connections however you want. You can read a bit of news here, bit of news there, and make a connection. Doesn't necessarily mean it's true. So the money that you're talking about hasn't even been released yet. Now they're basically saying because of this, we're going to hold back. And Iran's saying, like, oh, you promised, give us that money. Iran has been the one supplying weapons and training to Hamas and Hezbollah. That's well known. Now, the funny thing you see is the moment the attack happened, the first thing you heard the U.S. intelligence say, oh, it sounded like the Iranians were surprised by this attack. And when I read that headline, basically saying like, okay, the U.S. saying we don't want to fight a war with Iran right now. That's what that told me. But Israel, I think they're so pissed right now that they've been saying Hamas linked Iran, thus they're the reason why this attack happened, which I agree with them. If Iran wasn't supporting Hamas, this probably wouldn't happen to this level. My likely scenario that I see is Israel wants to strike Iran. And if they do, then Hezbollah is going to get in, and most likely the US is going to get into that one too. And it's going to become a mess. This is the likely scenario. I don't think Hezbollah is going to start a full out war because, they're just not ready for it. I don't know. It just doesn't seem like it's in their calculation. But in the end, the call is for Iran to say you go to war or not Hezbollah themselves.
You know what, Tarik, I understand where you're coming from. I really do. It's like if I'm in my house here and I have neighbors on either side and they're feuding. I'm in the middle of this feud because they come to me on one side of the fence and then the other side, and they complain about each other and whatever the feud is. And I can just imagine how everybody in Lebanon is just sick of it. But I can understand your criticisms of both sides because I could see it. I could see that something could have been done a long time ago if the world powers would have stepped in and said, hey, that's enough of this. Let's work this out. Let's do this.
So speaking of that, my comment on that is where I blame the U.S. The U.S. is very one-sided when it comes to that conflict. So the United States give Israel about almost $4 billion a year in military aid. I don't know if you knew that. That's just money given. That's just whether it's money or actual equipment, but it's worth almost $4 billion a year that goes to Israel. So the attack happens, and then Biden says to Congress, we need money for Ukraine and Israel. And we're sending between 10 to $14 billion to Israel because of this attack. So the scale of it is just, to me, is mind boggling. if your annual budget that you give Israel is $4 billion, as horrific as the attack was, it's a small scale attack in the grand scheme of things. To meet that with almost $15 billion, 3 times the amount of annual budget for that one attack, is kind of disproportional, in my opinion.
Oh yeah.
And then what? We gave the Palestinians $100 million. They're like, here, shut up. So they just full-heartedly support Israel, and that's it. You cannot be a mediator for peace if you favor one side over the other. Just
Exactly.
think of a parent with 2 kids. That's just not going to work. So I think there needs to be a neutral party to work, and most countries agree it should be a 2-state solution. But the the current mood in Israel, I don't think it's the people. I think it's the government. Just like we have a far right government, the far right government in Israel does not want, being led by Netanyahu, does not want a 2-state solution. He's made that clearly available, and all the Arabs have agreed. I think it was a summit in Beirut in 2002, where they all came saying we will support peace with Israel with a 2-state solution. That was 20 years ago, and still nothing. So the U.S. can influence Israel, but it just seemed. Here's my example. Two examples I want to give you. One example is the U.S. is so far on the side of Israel that if you ask Israel to be fair and move to the middle, then it's going to look that the U.S. is anti-Israel. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
It does.
that's the challenge that you have right now. The U.S. is not a fair mediator for peace in the Middle East, and yet they're always taking the lead. That's just not going to result. They could force Israel to make some concessions, but they don't. So the other
Well,
scenario
that comes back to them favoring the oil. That's been the synopsis over here since I was a kid. Was the reason Israel is favored by the United States is because they're the ones who had the oil emirates, and they were the ones who provided the oil at a cheap price for us. So Israel has always had our backing since basically World War II. Because of that issue.
I mean, there's a lot of history that I'm not privy to, but I think what happened in World War II for the Jewish people, what Hitler did, was, I think, a trigger point to push the creation of Israel, because they saw what happened to the Jewish people, and there was enough steam at that point to let's just get it done. So, because the first country that, I mean, I don't know if you know this, Israel declared its statehood, and 11 minutes later, the president of the United States, Truman, recognized Israel.
Right.
So it was planned. Now, the thing that I fault the Arabs on, because of lack of vision, in 1948, so it was established in 1947. In 1948, there was a UN resolution, I don't remember the number of it, that basically said, let's give Israel 14,000 square kilometers, and then let's give the Palestinians 11,000 square kilometers. So it's almost 50-50 split for that region. The Arabs and the Palestinians rejected that deal. And you look now where they're at, and it's just been nothing but disaster because of that one decision. If they've taken that decision back in 1948, none of this would have happened. But it was a terrible, the most terrible decision I think they made as a collective.
And it's all been political the whole time. It's all political thinking,
The sad
political
thing
solutions.
the sad thing about the Palestinian people is they've been used by different regimes throughout history, from the Syrians, even the Israelis, the Iranians. Everybody has used them to further their own ideology or goals. And in the end, who suffers? The Palestinians. They're still screwed. They don't have a state, and Gaza. You've seen the news about it. the most densely populated region in the world, right?
Yes.
And they're basically living in an open air prison because they have no control of their borders. And it's just so here's an example. I tell somebody asked me about what about this conflict. I'll summarize it for you in this example. So I'm Israel, you're the Palestinians. I have my hands on your throat and I'm slowly choking you. And then at the same time, I'm yelling at you, stop fighting me, stop resisting. I mean, you are choking a whole population. They have nowhere to go. They have no future. And you expect them to just sit there and just die? They're not. It's just not realistic.
Yeah. We have that same political mentality worldwide. Most of our governments have that ideology. They imply against the people that we're going to oppress you and you're going to like it. You're going to thank us for it. Because if you don't, then we're going to oppress you farther by putting you into a prison cell or torturing you or killing you.
Right.
We've got a lot of regimes around the world that are like that right now.
Which the US supports.
Yes.
The
See,
saddest
I,
the
I'm I'm
saddest
I'm like our congressman who turn around and state, "We're giving money to people who hate us." Why are we giving money to people who hate us? Can't they just hate us for free? You know. But
well, the US has been buying peace in the Middle East. I mean, so this the peace between Israel and Egypt, I think cost the US so many billions a year to keep that peace going. I mean, that's what they did in Afghanistan when they were doing with the tribes. They were basically buying them by giving them money so they don't kill Americans while they were there. That's only going to last until the money dries up.
yeah,
That's
But
right.
the biggest sad thing for me in this scenario is knowing how much the Jewish people have gone throughout history. They've been persecuted. And to see them doing what they're doing to the Palestinians is just to me is mind-boggling. You would think, knowing that their people have gone through so much suffering, that they would actually emphasize and be more empathetic to another people. And no, it seems like the exact opposite, and that just blows me away.
How does the jihad, the work into that the Islam has? I hear it a lot that they want to destroy Israel completely. Uh, Islam is, as the Islam religion calls for it or whatever. I don't understand it, but
No, it's just the ideology of Hamas. The Arabs don't want to destroy Israel. I mean, they tried and they can't. So they're just not. They cannot work together that well. If the Arabs were
yeah,
to unite, I mean, they could really do something. But they're just fractured and they hate each other. So they're never gonna uh, unite and do something together.
you said it exactly the way it should be earlier. You said diplomacy. You was talking about diplomacy to solve it, and I agree with.
Right, and the U.S. is not the one to do it.
Yeah, yeah,
But the thing is, Israel. It's almost like, I mean, there's so many examples I can give. It's to me like the United States and Israel is like a dad with a spoiled kid is what it's like. Like they cannot do wrong. I mean, if they just try to do, I mean, if there's any resolution in any way that says anything negative about Israel, the U.S. vetoes it. Period. No matter what the consequences are. And then on the other end, sorry, but on the other end, you have Russia who
yeah.
does the same thing for if something against Iran or one of their allies. It's just the
Right.
United Nations Council is a waste of, I don't know what. It's a
human
waste.
flesh.
I think a lot of the thinking in Israel is with a lot of the Jewish people is that during the Holocaust they didn't speak up, they didn't they didn't do anything to help themselves, and they were massacred, basically genocide. And I think maybe some of that thinking is, I'm not going to let this happen again. Anybody attacks me, I don't care who they are, what they we're not going to work it. We're going to defend ourselves, and maybe maybe it's starting to go overboard.
Which
Maybe
is which is a saying that they said never again, which I don't disagree with. They don't want to go through that, but I'm saying that they have the strongest military in the Middle East. Nobody can. They are safer if they have peace rather than have this going on over and over again. It just, to me, that's what makes sense.
Well, I'm going to be honest with you. I think there was a man that, if he was in charge now, this wouldn't be happening. So I'm not going to say who that is. I think we know who it is.
We do.
But if he had been, if he is around now, I think this wouldn't happen. But
I'm afraid to ask. I'm not
yeah.
getting it.
Well,
Yes.
I've got another question to ask you, Tarik. How do people? How can they support the Lebanese people with money and donations? Is there somewhere they can go on the internet that's safe where they can send money?
I don't know any specifics. I just know that most people, most governments and entities that have been donating, they're definitely going through and like NGOs, non-governmental agencies, because the government is corrupt and you cannot trust them with a single dollar. It's that simple. So the best route has been, I know somebody, I'm going to send money to him. Just, with Father Sammy, we send money directly through his organization to help schools or families in need and such. And Father Sammy helps more than just Christians. He's helped Sunni and Shia because he just helps who needs it. So
that's wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, it's just we're all human beings. The stuff that we fight over is so freaking ridiculous in the end. It's just sad.
Right.
The people that go through situations like that, they build toughness and resourcefulness as they progress. I mean, the biggest thing that I think the Lebanese got from the Civil War was the sense of wanting to enjoy life because I may not be here tomorrow, kind of thinking. So that made them more, I think, open to enjoying life, going out, hanging out with friends, just enjoying it. I'm not saying just like going, drugs and that, just saying knowing the value of life and enjoying it while you have it.
Right.
So
well, the man thinks that we have unlimited money. He really does.
The government lives like most Americans do on a credit card.
Yeah,
well,
they do.
Here's what they've done between COVID to now is basically they have put our great grandchildren in debt.
Yep.
To the point they will never see the end of that.
Right.
He acts like he's got a money tree out in the backyard that he's just pulling it off of, man.
Right, but just like I said before, it's not a vacuum. It didn't start here. It's been building up because I mean because power keeps shifting. What I think this country needs a third party to balance the two crazes that we have right now, in my opinion. Because I told you I'm a moderate. I think the Democrats, I think, are nuts on the left side. The Republicans are nuts on the right side. And I think the majority of Americans, in my opinion, are moderate. They're in the middle. We just want to work, good, enjoy our life, and just not worry about all this bullshit.
Right.
So if you're able to establish a third party, then that creates a bit more dynamic rather than this. Oh, we voted for this guy. It didn't work. Let's go to the other guy. That's what just keeps going back and forth, and it's just
where I see our biggest problem is out of our media. Mainstream media and corporate media. So every time we watch the news, they're picking sides, whether they're letting you know it or not. They're picking and choosing. That whole COVID debacle was a nightmare from the press.
You got Fox on one side and you got MSNBC on the other side. And then I don't know where CNN falls, but to me, like if I want to think of if I want to think of the only entity that I think of is balanced is NPR. And that's it.
No, NPR is definitely Democratic.
No, but here's the thing. you remember the example I gave you about Israel? I mean, the United States favoring Israel, that it's so far here. If you move here, it's going to look anti.
Uh-huh.
I really think that's where NPR is, but for certain views, it's going to look like it's all the way to the left, because they bring people from both sides to address all items, and it at least, I mean, I tell you, I think I'm a fairly balanced thinker, I hope, and that's how I see him, because I see where Fox is, I see where MSNBC is, and to me, NPR is nowhere on either side of those two.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I've seen some stuff come out of NPR that I sit there and shake my head. I'm like, what are they thinking, man? Where are they coming up with this garbage? There's no way that's true. And they're sitting there trying to sell it like it's gospel, man. And I'm like, where'd you
Because
get that?
the challenge that we have right now is anybody can be their own news outlet right now, right?
Yeah.
And so it's harder to, because it used to be many years ago, you listened to Walter Cronkite, you knew you were listening to the news. And now everybody's spinning their own take on the news because
That's
it's all
right.
about how much money, how much ads can we sell. That's not news anymore. That's entertainment.
Well,
Yes.
it's political ideology being sold to you as they're presenting the news, because they're giving you their political side of it as they're doing it. Back when I was a kid, they didn't do that. They reported whatever the facts were, and they left it alone, and it was up to the viewer to decide which way they were going to swing, left or right.
Right. But
And
both sides are doing it.
and around the mid 80s, that shifted. And I know Marty's going to hate this, but that came along with Geraldo Rivera, okay? And how he had to sensationalize the news by breaking into drug dealers' houses in Las Vegas, Nevada, with his camera crew to get their side of the story.
No, I'm no fan of Geraldo. So
Well, that's the whole reality, and you ended up with where we are right now. We're so polarized. It's actually perfect for politicians because it makes re-election easier for them.
right.
Also makes
And
assassination easier for the people, too, because they start targeting these people. I mean, we've
well,
had several of them. We just got through having one where they picked the guy out of Kennedy's yard, out there with some kind of pistol or rifle crawling around in his yard looking for him. So
right.
yeah, it's. I mean, we throw so
It's
much garbage out there
the
that
world's in turmoil. The
yeah,
world's
it
in
is.
turmoil.
Yeah, and
So,
social media is a fuel to all that stuff.
It is.
Tarik, you want to give us one last anything that you're thinking?
So here's
Yeah,
one last thought that I had that I mentioned to somebody today.
yeah,
Some people asked me about it and about what's going on, and I share. And I said, okay, just think of this. After the attack happened on Israel by Hamas, it was Saturday. Tuesday, President Biden was in Israel. That is faster than going to a state in the union that's had some sort of a disaster. Just to give you an idea where that, what that, how to weigh that.
exactly.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you for joining us on Civil Clarity. My co-host is Marty Espinosa. He's listed there as John Noel, but that's Marty. And
Yeah.
Dana, thank you for joining us. We hope to have you back another time, Tarik.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you very much. I really appreciate you coming on.